Thank you, John. Welcome, everyone. We are still experimenting with some new equipment, so bear with us on some things. I think we got it together pretty quick today. So welcome again to you here in the audience. If you're in the audience here, please turn off your cell phones for today's class. And welcome all of you online here today. Our format, if you're new here, is Guy will speak about 60 minutes. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back for a Q&A with all of you guys, either in the room or online. You can write questions in the chat boxes or the GoToWebinar question box, and we'll take care of that question online and bring it to Guy. Or if you're on GoToWebinar, you can speak directly to Guy. We do encourage that, to be able to help you and help all of us to clarify things that are inside of us regarding the talk or anything with your inner life. So take advantage of that. And I think that's really all we have for today as far as announcements, and I'm going to go ahead and read our topic and key lesson. The topic today says, learn this one lesson in life and watch the fear of failure fade from sight. And the key lesson reads, the world today, those who can't think, criticize. Those who criticize think they see. Those who think they see are blind. And those who live in the dark follow blindly the shadow of any beckoning thought that promises the end of whatever they fear will surely be found just around the next corner.
Good morning. Surely if they put any more plants around me, I will disappear. I agree, it's prettier to look at that than me, but I'm afraid something's going to jump out of that stuff. Sometimes before I speak, depending upon the material that I want to present, I am flooded with a very kind of bittersweet sadness, as I am this morning. I'm not claiming to be an artist of any kind, but I think that something that is common to all true artistry is that the image of, or the form of whatever has been perceived as true and timeless is always in time and incomplete. Which means the artist suffers a very distinct relationship with life, in that the perception is clear, but the impossibility of presenting it in total clarity is because of the form of the human being and the nature of what is intended to be presented as a new possibility. It's a great gulf that exists, isn't it, between the longing that you have for what is true and divine versus your incapacity or present incapability of being a conscious instrument of that very thing. And I think that it's fairly important to understand that sense of dissatisfaction is not a punishment, it's not a curse. In one respect, it acts as an almost endless invitation to further remove the dross, to get rid of the crud that covers the mirror of the mind, so that there can be a perfectly clear perception and action that follows it. Ask me if I feel any better having said that. No, it's all right. We are coming into our end of the year weekend of wisdom, and by necessity, because of the in-depth personal contemplation of the ideas that I intend to present to you, I don't know where one ends and the other begins. And so today, in one respect, serves as a kind of introduction to the introduction to the introduction. And I use those words, introduction to introduction to introduction, because in the truth, all I can do is introduce your mind to something that it is yet to see, so that in being introduced to something that lives within you that is true and timeless, you may wish to introduce yourself to the source of that truth and the timelessness that gives birth to it. So before I spend the whole 50 minutes introducing the introduction, let's get started looking at this much bigger picture that I want to introduce your minds to. I want to help your mind see what is already engraved in it, a living engravement. So the key lesson said that there is this part of us that is forever promising the end of our fears. But the fact that it keeps promising it and that we keep finding ourselves at the end of that path, having not found the end of our fear, the end of our discontentment, the end of our pain, the end of our sense of being incomplete, it must mean that somehow or other the lessons that we are intended to receive to bring us into the full flowering of a relationship with another order of reality. That's what these talks this week are about, to be in the world but not of it. That somehow or other there is some mistake that is being made. And the mistake that's being made is always at the crucial point, in that instant where something reveals to us what we have yet to see or understand about ourselves. Because were we to catch a true glimpse, the real impression of what it was being produced in the mind in that moment, we would learn the lesson in that moment and mitigate to some extent the pain of that nature that comes forward through time, if you will, and ensures that we keep making the same mistake because we keep listening to it tell us what to do in those moments we don't want. Clear enough? So how many of you realize that you keep making the same mistakes? Do you know how important that is for you as a student? I cannot say strongly enough how important it is that you see you keep making the same mistakes. And do you know why it's so important? Because as you start seeing the truth of it, you will set yourself to not make that mistake, and then you will see that mistake is being made for you before you're even present to the moment that it's being made. That will give you the impetus to want to understand a broader order of time, a broader order of your own understanding that presently you think goes before you to straighten things out. But what goes before you is a misunderstanding of your place in this world, of this world in the greater scheme of things, and how your relationship to a new understanding, to a new kingdom, is critical if you're ever going to actually learn from the mistakes that you make. And fear, by the way, the identification with it is always a mistake. Identification with any negative mistake is always, with any negative moment, is always a mistake. But that's what happens, isn't it? Just like that. Oh dear. It wasn't terribly long ago in one respect, and the reason I say it wasn't terribly long ago is because the truth still lives within us. It's said anyway that, like in the Talmud, which is some of the oldest books in the Jewish tradition, this idea, every blade of grass has an angel that bends over it and whispers, "Grow, grow." Now the actual translation of that's we kind of like that. Yeah, an angel, yeah, grow. Okay, I'm trying. But the real translation of that wasn't so palatable. What is it about us? We want everything coated in some kind of sugar. The real translation of it was that every blade of grass is connected to a greater cosmos. And that greater cosmos, connected to all the cosmos, is forever commanding that blade of grass to fulfill its responsibility in the greater scheme of things. A little different than an angel going, grow, grow, grow. It means that implied in this relationship between the stars and the blade of grass that is fed by their energies is something that is absolutely present but unseen entirely by the human eye. Physics, in one respect, is kind of beginning to understand some of this. What did Einstein say? Excuse me. God does not play dice with the universe. Isn't that exactly what the old saying from the Talmud was saying? That there is this interconnectivity between the macro and the microcosmos. I said yesterday in the Insight Timer, I didn't know I was going to work it into today's talk. I said, there's no star that doesn't tremble if a blade of grass wilts. And there's no blade of grass that grows that a star isn't affected. And the physics is just starting to understand this, that this universe of ours is not some arbitrary physical system, but rather an incredibly impossible to grasp with thought, intelligent organism that is ceaselessly interconnected through itself at a quantum level, so that there's no such thing as distance and time where one thing isn't acted on and changes that doesn't act on and change everything in the entire system. But it does so in a scale of time that we're not capable of seeing with our eyes or understanding with the mind. But we have an equal facility inside of ourselves that is created to be a participant in the whole of that movement. Can you at least feel that much even if you can't see it? Freedom is seeing it. Because in seeing it, then you're no longer apart from it. And if you were no longer apart from that, how can you make a mistake? Which is our topic today. So why don't we learn? If you see it all, I'm asking you, do you, that in one respect, given this gorgeous, infinite, perfect relationship between the heaven and all of the stars, then is not everything already done? Yes or no? Well, what is it that you're always trying to do when it seems like your life comes undone? What are you trying to do? Put it back together again. See, I'll just do what I can in the time I have, and then what I don't do, it'll just bleed over into the rest of the talks for the week. You've heard the expression, as above, so below. Isn't that kind of what we're talking about? I want to give you another look at this idea of as above, so below, so that you can begin to meld all of these higher insights, impressions, God willing, that you're receiving, into something that receives the impressions and does as only that part of the soul can do, which is to marry these impressions into a singular understanding that requires no thought whatsoever to directly not just perceive the moment as it is, but that the action would be clear and pure given the depth of that impression. Yes? As above, so below. Here we are on this little world, far, far out in space. We're a little blue dot located on the edge of our own galaxy. And who knows where our galaxy is relative to the rest of all of that. So, is this world that we're in, is this world in the galaxy? Yes or no? Or is the galaxy in this world? Well, the answer is both, but significantly, this world is like a pearl that has been formed from the substance of the galaxy and all of its interactions, which means the heart of this world is galactic. The heart of this world is the activity of sun after sun after sun that gave its life and continues to, so that something may be constantly given birth in this world that is in the world but not of it. Meaning that not of that doesn't mean that it isn't born of it. It means that there's no direct relationship yet between this world and our understanding of our place in it and the broader scheme of creation of our divine Father, of our divine Mother, that has seen to this thing that, as Einstein said, kind of like him because he was a pretty brilliant mind. You know that when he was dying, do you know what he said? He said, let's get on with it. I've done my share. May you have that thought when your time comes to quit this body. But you have to be honest about it. Your suffering over inane things does not prove you have done your share. It means you have stolen from the share given, allotted to you, and to the rest of the world that you are intended to be part of its continuation and its growth. Why don't we learn if what I've said to you is true? Consider the lilies of the field. They neither toil nor struggle. What are all of these ideas alluding to other than there is a much broader world that we don't see, let alone understand, is the fountain of our very existence. And if we understood at the very base of ourselves is something that is constantly perfecting itself, then all we would need to do to bring an end to the endless mistakes we make, we could make a list. I don't have time to do it with you today. Then certainly we would finally start to learn, wouldn't we, what is required of us in the moment to not be the instrument of the continuing mistake that humankind not just propagates but perfects through all of the things that we as human beings and participants in that do in order to do what? To protect ourselves from something. You don't see it. That's what the big bully is the endless need to protect yourself from something that something in you before you even know it's there is telling you is threatened. It's impossible for us to stop making the same mistakes until we start to understand the actual relationship we have with this broader reality that is the basis of our being. Segue. Deep breath. You know the saying about kernel of corn, unless it abides in the ground alone and dies there, it does nothing, yes or no? Kernel of corn. What choice does a kernel of corn have laying in the ground? Well, none. The kernel has no choice but to allow the forces that created and formed it. Do you understand that? The sun, its light, is the kernel of corn. Just in a different form. That kernel of corn will finally radiate into popcorn. Sorry, this is the stuff that visits my mind while I'm talking. Well, the sun's kind of doing that, isn't it? So it has no choice but to allow the forces to create it to do what? What does it have no choice to do with the forces that created it? To allow those forces to act on it again, seemingly again. It's not again, it's actually a wave. To bring that kernel of corn in its form to an end in its form, so that in its transformation by the forces that began and gave it its form, it may take on a new form that serves another role in the greater plan of this divine world. Do you see that? Now that kernel of corn can't go down there and go, nope. It's not a good day. You've got the wrong kernel. Oh, God. You don't hear it every day you say that. What's that heat? What's that? What is that? No, I'm eating. Leave me alone. It has no choice. You and I do. That's what's meant by the will of heaven on the will of earth. That the influence of another order, another kingdom altogether, something your minds don't, you can think it, but you don't live there yet. Another kingdom altogether that is ceaselessly not just interacting with this kingdom, but doing so that those things in this kingdom might be a more pure and better reflection of the kingdom that gave it its kind, its nature. So if all of that's true, and I just spent, darn it, 20 minutes outlining that, what is interfering? What is it? What is the nature of this mistaken action that I take in any given moment when, if we understand everything that we've outlined, to participate in that movement, there can be no mistaken action. Just for a second, try to see it. We spend our whole lives trying to not make a mistake. You were brainwashed. You were beat over the head. You belong to this group, this religious affiliation, that political party, this power group, whatever it is. And they're not just out there. They begin in here. And every last one of them saying, conform. Because if you don't, you're going to make a mistake. And when you make a mistake, you'll be an outcast. What was Jesus? What was Buddha? What was any true teacher? You must understand that the only hope you have is to become an outcast. Instead of being cast constantly in the form of something that avoids everything, trying to bring it into the reason for its very existence. Let's bring up key lesson number 3, please. I try to put these ideas into something that you can read and download at home. Read along with me. It is impossible to be in command of any moment when, for our fear of it, we resort to some form of imitation to see us through it. The comfort of relying on any form of imitation may feel like it's protecting us, but it is itself pretense. And therefore, pretense being the secret source of almost all of our psychological fears. Do you know that when you understand what's right, you never have to defend it to another human being? You take that all the way to the furthest extrapolation, and you'll understand why Christ refused to answer Pilate. Nice deep breath. Ready? First major point out of all the points. We make mistakes. What is the one mistake we all make? Oh, and let's be clear about this. How many of you think you make different mistakes? No, but I'm serious, honest to God. Yes or no? You know, I made that mistake yesterday, but I learned. And then I make what I think is another mistake, and I judge myself as severely, but at least, and I love this, I can't tell you how many times I hear this, at least I'm not making the same mistakes I used to. What is that one mistake do you think it is that we make? And when we make that mistake, it gives birth to every other action that turns out to be a mistaken action, a form of karma that must again be paid for over and over again, not as a punishment, but as an attempt to this broader intelligence to organize and perfect its balance. What do you think that is? Imagination, identification, anybody else? No, all wrong. All right, you see, that's the point, isn't it? Those are right, but what's at the basis of that? When I sit and sometimes have, call it what you will, a certain understanding that comes, I think to myself, well, here's another nesting doll. Because all I can do is bring you into the whole set of dolls, so that you see that everything is set within, set within, set within, set within, and it is infinite, which means there's no one understanding that brings an end to the misunderstanding and the mistaken actions we take. Rather, it sits at the heart of it, one understanding that when it is grasped and then acted on, because just because you grasp the idea, you should know by now, especially those of you who've been studying with me for like 8,000 years, that it's not going to change something. A new action is inquired in a new understanding, isn't it? So what is the one mistake that we keep making all the time in every unwanted moment? Here it is. You might want to write it down. The mistake is that the moment we don't want is a mistake. Isn't that the instantaneous conclusion? The instant any form of resistance comes up. And we can't be blamed in one quote. No child can be blamed for the imitation of the adult that it didn't know any better than to follow, because that's what everything did. That's what we do. We look at our mothers, our fathers, their fathers. We look at mothers and fathers through history, although mothers and fathers are getting worse and worse and worse, because this consciousness is increasingly corrupted by this idea that somehow or other, whatever it is that just happened to me is a mistake. And when I see a mistake happen, all I know to do to respond to that mistake that I see is to do what I saw my mother and father do when they said that was wrong. It shouldn't be like this. Why are they the way they are? You can't make a list long enough of the questions the mind comes up with that by the appearance of that question, what gives rise to the question, what's wrong with this moment? What gives rise to that question? Something in us that knows the moment should not be like that, and because it did turn out like it is, and it's not as I want it to be, it's a mistake. And it's a mistake primarily because it isn't what I need the moment to be, so that who I am and take myself to be can continue unharmed, unchanged. That's what protecting yourself is ensuring. That you remain unchanged. But again, who would protect themselves if they actually understood that they're not protecting the perfection they imagine they are? They are being remanded over to an imperfect understanding that wants to ensure its imagined perfection continues. How many of you are darn close to being perfect? Come on, let me see it. So just ever so quickly, to bring it down a little bit, what are some of the default actions that we take in the moment where suddenly we're sure that the world has made a mistake, that something has made? What are some of the default actions? And by the way, mistakes that we keep making, because why? Because we imitate. What are some of the default actions? John?
We become defensive.
Defensive, anybody? Ellen? Yeah, defensive, blamed. Leah? Judging. Rushing. Angry. Resentment. We could just go all the way through the litany of negative reactions, and all of them are born out of an instantaneous resistance, yes? And so, what do I do different than my mother or my father? I judge them. They never learned. But you look at me askew, a thought about you will come into my mind, and in that second, I am convinced by my resistance to my own imagination that what I am experiencing in that moment, I'm only experiencing because you are a mistake. Can there ever be love amongst any human beings as long as any part of me looks at you and responds to you from the perception that you are a mistake, and that I don't even know that you're a mistake is proven to me by the pain I feel as I resist you? And am I resisting you? Or am I resisting that moment that came along to show me, Guy, you're making the same mistake, man. You think this moment shouldn't be the way it is. That you shouldn't have to do this, or you ought not have to go through that. That life should have lined up the way it did for others so you'd have a better share of it. Why must you suffer what you suffer? Every last one of those questions begins with an unconscious nature that assumes, so that it can continue its form in time and place, that assumes that God has made a mistake. You either see the wholeness, the holiness, or you don't. But we don't see the holiness, do we? When a moment comes that we don't want because we are remanded over by an instantaneous form of resistance, yes or no, that does what? Let's keep going. What do you think the onset of that resistance produces in a mind, listen, that by its summary finding of the suffering it suddenly feels pressed to take, that has already decided in the moment by its reaction what it is that has caused that pain? What do you think the action of that mind is that sees you, me, my relationship, that sees that as a mistake? You understand, you can't get negative without blame. Do you understand that? Resentment always holds blame. Blame is division. Division is that this world is separate from my world. The experience I'm having is because of you, not because my consciousness, by the grace of God, has been set up so that at that influence comes, I can actually recognize, look at this kernel that's getting harder than a rock. This heart that won't change. Because something in it clings tenaciously to this identity that is so formalized, the split second something threatens its freedom. What is the default action of that consciousness? The path of least resistance. Path of least resistance. See again, you kind of have to see this big picture. If I just read somewhere that there was an asteroid that was passing between us and Betelgeuse, this huge red star, and that for a split second when this asteroid passes by Betelgeuse, this huge red star, somewhere out in, actually it's in here, somewhere out there, that it'll seem like that star blinks off and on. Now that's really only interesting by and large to people who like to look through telescopes, because that happened like 10 million years ago, probably. That's how long the light takes to get to us. But something is interfering with our vision in that moment, and I'm asking you, can you see for a fact that there is something in us that instantaneously takes the path of least resistance, and we don't know it's done it? And what is, as we go through this material, what is this path of least resistance? Imagination, identification. All right, look, these are right. But we have to drill down a little bit. The path of least resistance is always imitation. Instantaneous imitation. I instantaneously give myself over to what I have been conditioned to meet unwanted moments with. It's like that. So I imitate the past. Please? Whose past? Can I say that any more emphatically? I felt like William Shatner for a second. Whose past? Whose past am I imitating? Mine? The past, the known, this consciousness, its past that is intended in every moment to be made anew as it is brought into a higher order of consciousness that reveals and transforms what can no longer serve its time, because its time has been served and now it is time for that kernel of corn to go pop, pop, pop. Please? Bring up key lesson number 4, will you? Read it with me. Every misguided action we take begins with identifying with a deeply conditioned, mistaken perception that whatever the moment may be we don't want is a mistake. Now, these words are very deliberate. I don't know that you understand how much time can be spent trying just to put the right words together so that the impression can be complete. But sometimes I have to explain the impression. What is a mistaken perception of the moment? A mistaken perception. The perception isn't taken as it's intended. That's what a mistaken perception is. If it was properly received, the impression, then there would be no discontinuity between the influence and what it was acting on. It would be seen as a singularity, wouldn't it? Can you make that leap? But there's this great interruption in us. And the great interruption is that at the moment where the perception should be clear and the possibility fulfilled through the transformation of what's being acted on, that in that moment something goes, nope, nope. What would you think of somebody, you're sitting in them at the restaurant, and the waiter has not come to your table. I'm picking something fairly common. Or you're in traffic, whatever it may be. Yeah. And you're instantly negative, yes or no? Do you ever think to yourself, what you're saying is that, you know what, God has made a mistake here. He must not have seen my reservation. Now, am I excusing the rude or inconsiderate behavior of the person on the street or the waiter who looks at you and who's having a bad day and blaming the pain he's in on you being the way you are? So he's looking at you as a mistake. He says, I'm not going to wait on those people, and when I do, I'm going to make them pay. That goes on. You may not see it behind you. It's going on within you. Somebody sets you off. Do you hear anything inside of your head go, oh, they are going to pay for that? You don't hear that. You know why? Because you'd go, my God, that's evil. But underneath it, layer after layer of this dark pearl, the amalgamation of the content of one's past, trying to ensure that whatever is present isn't going to disturb it, coding and coding and coding that consciousness with the continuation of its own content so it can be increasingly sure that there's a mistake that's been made. Again, I return to this idea. Resistance is always followed by a negative reaction, yes? What's the root of the negative reaction? I'm bringing you, the moment's wrong. I'm not supposed to sit here and feel like this. Do you ever sit there? I hate this. And then the minute that that resistance comes up, and by the way, the resistance is always the proper response to an influence acting on something intended to be changed by the relationship with that influence. But when that influence comes that we don't see, this is what I'm saying. I don't know how to, how do I get you to see all at once? There's no moment in which some form of incredibly beautiful divine entanglement at some so-called impossible point in time isn't acting on what is in time and everything responding. And please, to the point, the blade of grass is in one respect the same as all blades of grass, but not one blade of grass is the same as any other blade of grass. Which means although its reaction may be uniform, the way it reacts is always related to the content of itself. Which means there's no moment that isn't acting on you, and you are always being acted on, that isn't bringing into the light of what has acted on the passive nature, the creation, the sudden possibility of that creation by some miracle becoming aware of itself. A creation aware of itself because it is being acted on by the Creator, and aware at the same time as it is being acted on that there's a reason for the action of the divine upon what has come forward in time. And that is so that whatever has come forward in time may serve the time that it is in, which is timeless, for the purpose given to it. Nope. Nope. What did Dostoevsky say? That I may be worthy of my sufferings. See, it doesn't it? I assume because many of you I've known for a long time, and one way or the other continue to study. Isn't it amazing that on one hand, some part of me, some little part, knows that it is indeed inseparable from the Logos, inseparable from the divine, inseparable from this universe. And then you can see it. Well, how do I have an insight into something like that? Does resistance have insight into anything? So the unconscious reaction to unwanted moments tells us, without equivocation, good? I'm always afraid. That there has been a mistake. And because there's been a mistake, I must fix it. You, David, are a mistake. Go away. There's only mistaken relationships based on a mistaken perception of the moment. And the full perception of the fact that what is holy doesn't make mistakes, the whole perception of that is called love. Because there's no individual outside of that movement to contest it. And there's only the constant surrender of the self to the understanding that though it may feel to me like this moment is wrong, I don't want it. I don't want to go. I don't want to. Just go. Let's just whine for a moment, shall we? I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to. A few of us went, I'll say for me, tried to play golf yesterday. It's 39 degrees. It's very hard to swing when you're 75 years old. And some of them were able to do it. Me, I made tremendous mistakes. When I say I made tremendous mistakes, what is the perception of that moment where you do something? And listen to this. Why would anyone be embarrassed? Are you ever embarrassed when you make a mistake? Why? I'm not supposed to do that. And so when the moment of resistance comes up to whatever it is that takes place, is there any possibility of participating in the revelation of all that was unfolding in that moment so that you might actually learn something from that interaction? Or does resistance close the door and ensure that you will continue to make the same mistakes over and over again? Why? Because I'm not learning. And what is learning? Learning is not acquiring some new knowledge to apply to a moment in order to fix a mistake. That's what we call learning. I want to learn. I hear it all the time. I want to learn how to be this. I want to learn how to be that. You can't learn how to be one. You can't. Who can tell me why it's impossible to learn how to be one? Because there's no one there to learn. There's just development. There's just refinement. There's just perfection. And there's no one there measuring it. Can you look at a moment and say, he, she, this, that is a mistake, without something in you prior to the revelation of that influence being affirmed and assured that somehow or other, excuse me, it knows how things should be? Now, I know I'm going to hear questions come in and emails, and not that I don't want to interact with you, I do. I'm not saying this world isn't a mistake-making machine. But it's not the world that's the mistake-making machine. I don't know if you know this, but deer, the only no creature makes mistakes. Do you know that? Well, you go, what about that deer? You know, he was sitting there, it was the rut time, and she was all involved, and he was all involved, and there was a wolf, and that got him. You're saying that's not a mistake? No, that's not a mistake. That's part of the consistent transformation of energy. But I look out and I go, no, that's wrong. That shouldn't happen that way. So what are we looking at here as we come close to the close? First of all, first major point, can you see that, first of all, you never make your own mistakes. You never make your own mistakes. Because at the root of it, there's only one mistake that has been going on for millennia. That's a good word for it. That's the baloney of human time on planet, bulimia. No, I make the same mistake my father made. The mistake of believing that somehow or other I'll be at peace if I just pay enough people to like me. The mistake of resenting others because they have what I don't, and why do they get that when I'm not allowed to have it, or whatever it may be. The same mistake. You saw it kill everyone on this planet. I saw it take my father's life. He lived a fairly long age, which is unbelievable considering what he did to himself. And what was he doing to himself? He made the mistake of believing that drugs and alcohol was a way to get through the moments that he didn't want. Paying everybody to like you. Wondering why suddenly that pressure is upon you. Oh my God, this, not only is this not right, but now I have to go to hell in order to make sure that this doesn't turn out to be the mistake I'm afraid it's going to be. Yes or no? Whose mistakes are those? How did I learn that? Well, for one thing, I was brought into a world as a creation inherent in which there was a fallen understanding as to the relationship of things. The knowledge of good and evil means that evil is a mistake, good isn't. But you can't have good without evil at that level, which means misunderstanding and identifying with either one of them is in fact the mistake, because you look at the world and measure everything according to the conditioning that you've been given as a human being, environmentally, psychologically, familial-wise, religion. I can't remember it. I'll get to it next week. I'm not going to go past that. So how do we learn to make our own mistakes? How do we learn? Look, can you see that? I have to learn to make my own mistake, yes or no? How do I learn to make my own mistake? I have to stop making the first mistake, which is to identify with the immediate resistance to any moment that doesn't confirm me as I imagine myself or that threatens the moment. I have to see the fact of that. Because otherwise I'm remanded like that, am I not, over to whatever the resistance which comes up. You can't stop the resistance and you can't stop the reaction. That's impossible because it belongs to a body in time that has amalgamated in itself and through itself a kind of personality, a persona, all which, by the way, was formed in order to ensure that that organism could go through this world and recognize a mistake and protect itself from them when it took place. When the thing it's protecting itself from is its own past. Isn't it? So let's wrap this up. You've all heard the expression, or if you haven't, I would have liked it to have been my acronym, but FEAR is an acronym. It's a word and an acronym, and it stands for false evidence appearing real. FEAR, false evidence appearing real. Yes? What evidence is there that proves something unreal to be real? Look, I'm a detective. I found some evidence. It was planted. What evidence proves that something that isn't real is real? Who plants that evidence? Who makes that evidence? Do you understand the question? Who makes that evidence? A nature that requires the constant confirmation of itself as being someone or something that the world is making a mistake with. And so I have to have the evidence to prove that I need to punish you. That I need another plan, something else to control. I just need a few more minutes. Pat says that's going on my gravestone. I wish I had more time. If you've understood anything, perhaps you can understand this and apply it. Any moment that I feel resistance to, any relationship that brings up a disturbance, that I want to blame the pain of that disturbance on another human being. All of that resistance and every mistaken action that follows is born of a mistaken perception. And until I can perceive the moment as it is intended, as it is given, there's no way that I will ever be given what that moment is intended to help me see. And what is it that that moment is given to me that I am intended to see? That the divine doesn't make a mistake. That whatever problem I have with you, this, them, or other is because I have brought, that this nature has brought in time itself, in the form of thoughts, in the form of images, ideology, all of the fanaticism connected to what a person believes. Back to the beginning. Do you not think when you correct someone, the mistake they've made or the mistake in the world, do you not think that, well, that's it, now I'm free until I have the next family dinner? Until the next, this is what's so crazy, until literally the next moment when the text comes in or the email or the news about the government or about finance or about someone doing something, and then the conspiracies, they start to roll, and they roll effortlessly off of my tongue from a brain that is so conditioned to find something to base its base reaction upon, instead of recognizing I have one responsibility in this moment, and that is to be the most perfectly responsive creature I can be. And to not let my regret or my resentment or my fear or my wish that the moment would just leave me alone, instead of wishing it would leave me alone, ask it. Ask that moment by a certain form of acceptance. Surrender, if you will, to the broader understanding, not to the sensation of yourself as being a part of all that's godly, but to surrender directly to the moment of that impression, so that it's clear that there is something that suddenly I didn't know it was in. Wouldn't you think it? Wait a second, I got 2 minutes. Wouldn't you think it was strange? I'm going to give you a picture. Here I am. I'm sitting in my office. I'm driving in my car. Turn on the radio. And all of a sudden, this is one of my stories, all of a sudden, not only am I there, but there's someone in my lap. And whoever's in my lap has their hands on the steering wheel, has the hand on the dial that's tuning in what it's tuning in. And so I'm literally sitting there, and something has come up out of me that I didn't know was in me. That's the problem. Didn't scare me. It didn't scare me that suddenly I became someone who wasn't there the moment before. And whoever I became the moment that wasn't there the moment before, it knows that there's a mistake. And I just go, you handle it. You take care of it. And it does by what? The path of least resistance. I think that's probably enough. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
Welcome back, everyone. We're ready to get started in just a moment. I have a couple of important announcements just to bring to your attention. First of all, is that a reminder that all these online talks are sponsored by the Life of Learning Foundation here in Southern Oregon, where Guy is the director. And if you'd like to help us financially in any way, small or large, we appreciate it. On that, know that every donation that you make, no matter the size, helps reach out and help people like yourselves around the world. You wouldn't, we get so many notes of appreciation for these teachings from really all over the planet, and it's really nice to see and to read. Some of us behind the scenes gets to read these, but to know that it is working for those who have ears to hear. So if you're these ideas are helping you, go to guyfinley.org/donate. You can do that anytime and help us out where you can. We appreciate it. And all those who are already doing that, thank you so much. Also, you can go to that page, and there are other ways you can help the foundation that don't cost anything. So do visit that page and help us where you can. And then this coming weekend, just a note on your calendar, it's a little different. This is our holiday weekend of wisdom, and it's Friday through Sunday. So this coming Friday night, Guy will be speaking again. He will speak this Wednesday as always, but he will be speaking. We normally have student groups. That's the beginning of our holiday weekend of wisdom. So Guy speaks Friday night at our regular time, 7 p.m. And then Saturday, which is an to guyfinley.org/weekend. But don't miss it. And it's very likely, which Guy normally does, is Wednesday night will be a part of this whole idea of to be in the world but not of it. Even today's talk, as you could see, is as he was saying, an introduction in that way. So do join us. We and there are several people who are coming here. If you can, you're still invited if you'd like to come here as well. So go to guyfinley.org/weekend to get more information. All right, we'll bring Guy on, and I think he has a few words to say before we get started, and then I'll take it from there.
No, strangely enough, I don't. Can anybody hear me, Doug?
Now I can hear you, yes.
Okay. I said I don't have any additional thoughts.
Okay, thank you. All right. So now's the time, everybody, on GoToWebinar to raise your hand. Just click on the little hand and come into the queue. And as we see, I see a name coming up there, but Guy, we also have several questions from before, and we have 5 total. So we'll get to those the best we can today, but we always like to give a little advantage to those in the queue, so we will start with Fiona.
Hello, Guy.
Ah, Fiona.
How are you?
Pretty good.
This is good. This is such a rare and unique opportunity. So I really do appreciate being able to, give my little contribution. It's fantastic. So a lot of things you were talking about in relation to also the last couple of talks.
Yes.
That I listened to, when I relate that to presence and the presence moment, my relationship, because it's all on the presence moment, obviously, and There's many ways of having a relationship with the present moment. And it's developed a lot so that I can really feel more of not something to actually stop and be in the present moment as if I'm separate to the present moment. I am the present moment. We're all the present moment, as in that consciousness is the present moment when you put your attention there, no matter what is going on throughout there. It could be, hellish stuff running through that, and just that's the present moment. It's not stopping and tuning into your senses, or well, it is, but it is all of that, but it's so much more as well.
Yes, so much more as well. Just a little thought to encourage your own contemplation on the topic. When all is said and done, meaning as a person awakens to participate in this broader relationship between kingdoms, the truth is that there really isn't such thing as the present moment. Is there any point in the flow of a river that you can call the present part of it? Or is the whole flow of it, from beginning to end, it's time? So what we call the present moment is always something apart from it, weighing or measuring it. When the real present is the simultaneous unification of what we would call the past and the future, one rolling into the other rolling out of itself in a ceaseless stream. And there's no self in the present moment. There is the self with a capital S that is the instrument, the continuation and the perfection of that movement. This is our problem, is that we always want to know that part of a movement to know whether it's moving right or not. Yeah. Again, a lot to see, a lot to work at understanding. I hope that we can continue to not expand our knowledge, but somehow or other enhance and expand the part of our heart and mind that knows it is meant to be a citizen of another kingdom. Because that wish cannot be denied if it is kept first and foremost. On we go, Doug. Let's take a couple of those written questions from, what is today, Sunday? From Wednesday.
Okay. Well, this one actually, I think this came in Wednesday. This is from Jill, Guy. And she asked, is there such a thing as someone hurting you emotionally? If the bully resides in me, then I'm responsible for any reaction I have to that person, right? Not including abuse.
Look, what's more scary than someone who pretends that they haven't been hurt? You do it all the time. Somebody makes that little comment, and wasn't even pointed at you, just a comment. I'm sensitive and I've been wounded. On the other hand, there are people who, because they continue to make the same mistake and hide from themselves the fact of it through their justification of their pain, increasingly come into pain that cannot do anything other than lash out at human beings to prove that they are the one that's right and that you are the mistake in their life. Even they are part of this movement. You just don't see it. Because if you did, you'd understand. You know, my husband, my wife, my brother, my sister, that hurt like hell. But instead of believing that the person's mistaken for saying something that's causing you emotional pain, you understand, if you're present, there's no way on this earth that I could feel that way unless something in me was convinced that I am all that and more and beyond any criticism or comment of any human being. So that in that moment, your pain serves my perfection instead of your pain perfects mine. Do you understand that? That's what I'm talking about. Back to you, Doug. And never stay with anybody that abuses you. Boy, if you understood that, you'd divorce yourself on the spot. Okay, Doug.
All right. We're going to go to Dennis in the queue, and then next we'll go, not in the queue, a written question, then we'll go to Gloria in the queue. Dennis asks, Guy, how do you get back on the right track if you unknowingly got off the road and don't know how to get back on the right track?
When you see you're on the wrong track, you're on the right one. Stay there. On we go.
All right, let's go next to Gloria.
It feels like when you judge yourself that you think you're on the right track. Anytime you judge yourself, it begins with resistance to the revelation of yourself that somehow or other I'm a mistake. Do you ever feel like that? Oh man, I don't know what happened. Everybody else came out kind of okay, but me, whatever it is that happened right now, my God, I came out of the oven too soon. I didn't get sugar added. Somehow they put a little lemon in there where it was supposed to be cinnamon, and I'm a fruitcake. Yes, you are. But even though there's only one fruitcake in the entire world, it's okay to be a fruitcake as long as you don't stay nuts. Thanks. I'll be here all week. On we go, Doug.
All right, Gloria's in the queue.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gloria.
Good morning. This was such a beautiful talk. Talking about wisdom, it's just so eye-opening that I never really thought about. I try to focus on things to be in the present moment. But I never thought of it as being timeless. I never looked at it that way. So I'm just seeing it. Yes, it is timeless. The time from the time that I'm born it was just given to me, and that's going to go all the way through to the very end. That the time that I'm giving. That's so beautiful. It's so much wisdom in that, and I don't know. This talk just hit my heart. Really hit home with my heart.
I'm glad.
And it opened it.
I'm glad, and I'll pass along an encouraging word to you. And why is it that, and in particular, certain writings, certain art forms, why is it that they have stood the test of time? The men and women who penned or otherwise carved or played out the art that has sustained itself and withstood the test of time. Why is that? And the answer is that whenever it was perceived, and any time it's perceived, it stirs what we could call a sudden new thought. But the truth is, it isn't that it stirs a new thought. What it stirs is a higher part of the intellectual and emotional parts that suddenly realize that it has within itself, within me, there's something of this timelessness, there's something of this beauty, there's something of this wisdom. And then thought follows the stimulation, the impression that stimulation produces. And then thought becomes something that we kind of get stuck with because we start to feel that the thought is the thing, and it's not. But we can begin to recognize that these moments, yes, how do you say this? I saw something, I want to give myself to what I saw. But I don't know how yet to quite give myself to what I see. So what I give myself is to my thoughts about what I saw. And the thoughts about what I saw are not what I saw. They are a fractal of it. They are an incomplete expression of that moment. But eventually, when you have enough of that, you will see with greater clarity that taking thought, while it is appropriate, especially if you want to communicate, is good, but it is removing you from the impression and the influence instead of enhancing it. Because really what it does is it enhances the sense of me knowing something. And then again, now you will make a mistake. Life's a mistake when it doesn't confirm what I know. On we go.
All right, Guy, I think you have this in your queue. Next up, written question from Juan. He says, hello, Guy. Thank you very much for your teachings. You have referred to celestial moments as those bringing revelation out of a resistance. What occurs when there is no actual physical moment, but an unconscious uneasiness is the celestial, conscious uneasiness is the celestial moment, also underlying and continuous. Because I understand is what actually triggers the resistance. I hope I'm not too confused.
One. You know what? You don't need to send it. I have the basis of it. First one, I hope that you will catch today's talk because it pretty much explains everything that you've asked. That's first. And secondly, and I'm going to go into this in great depth over the next week, big picture. Is there any influence anywhere in whatever we would call the universe that by its movement and essential timeless relationship to all other parts of the universe doesn't in some way or another, no matter how infinitesimal it may be, does not change everything that is connected to it? One thing changes, all change. This is what they've discovered with so-called quantum physics, this entanglement that is not bound by time and space. That is true, then that means that, and I've said this before, for those of you who've been studying with me a long time, you somehow or other, you think a disturbance is a mistake. Do you not? Anytime there's a disturbance, it's a mistake. Because I'm not supposed to be disturbed. The light dwelleth in the darkness comprehends it not. Singularity gave birth to chaos. In the chaos is unity. In unity is the understanding of chaos. And in the understanding of chaos, there's no mistake that can be viewed as apart from the unity that gave rise to it. Patricia's on stage. Doug, go ahead, Squirt.
Hi, my name is Patricia. Well, how many of you watch Young Children on TV? It's a TV series. It's a delightful series about a little genius kid. And I heard him say a quote from
From a TV character?
No, from Socrates.
Okay, there you go.
I knew how to say that.
We just had to hold on.
Yeah, from Socrates that said, what Guy said in one of the earlier lessons, and we've all experienced it, if you have, the more we think we know, the less we know.
Correct.
And the more we learn, we feel like we don't know anything.
Don't know anything.
That's a quote, actually, from
Yes, it is.
Socrates. And also, he said something, and I couldn't catch it, and I tried to look up the different quotes from Socrates, but it was all, Socrates, anything that he said was through Plato. Plato? Yeah, Plato.
Yeah, Plato.
Plato. Yeah. Not Plato.
Well, he did take on that shape and form a little bit.
But anyhow, I couldn't find it, but I thought it said that all knowledge is already within you, which
Correct.
is this work.
Made in the image of God. I think we're open, Doug.
All right, Guy, let's go to another written question. Mary, she asks, how do we manage to have control over our attention so as to think through these things as an issue occurs that stirs up our emotions, such as anger, for example? How do we practically keep our calm amidst the storm? And in addition, when part of the discomfort is also because we realize that once again, we reacted in a way we otherwise wouldn't, as Apostle Paul would say.
If you had a dog, and for whatever reason, and it's always the owner's fault, a mistake the owner has made, there was no way in heaven that that dog could be off the leash without doing something ungodly. So that you actually could never enjoy your time with that animal for fear that if you didn't have your eye on it, hell was going to break loose. One day you'll understand that until you can keep your eye on what you are attending to, hell is going to break loose. That's what hell is, to tell you the truth. Hell is the will of and the attention that belongs to a level of consciousness that can only confirm itself through the pursuit of itself and what it desires. That is what has made hell on earth. Earth has no hell other than humanity. Everything else on earth works for the greater good of all that is created out of the earth. And so, Mary, one of the difficult things, and yet not difficult because it's so evident, I have to somehow or other begin to recognize and see the correlation between the conflict that I feel with somebody or a moment that I say is a mistake and the fact that my attention has fallen onto something that gives evidence of why it's a mistake. And the evidence belongs to who and what I've been. And it is continuing itself through the conflict it blames on the thing it says is a mistake. You can find, and it's up to you, I can't and I won't, try to convince you of anything. But I speak from myself, about myself, something I've maybe only spoken of a time or two in the past. What seems like 1,000 years ago, I realized I absolutely had no control over my attention. Like St. Francis, who called himself the jackass, meaning that there is a consciousness that's going to pursue what pleases it, what it doesn't want. It's going to live in a world of its own, and it doesn't care what it does to itself or anyone else. It is just for itself, and that's the end of it. That's what it is. That's what this consciousness is. You may not see it. That's what it is. And unattended, it is a monster making monsters. And back in the day, and this was a long time ago, I personally began to read things like the Philokalia, old books that had to do with this idea that somehow or other one must learn to practice the presence of God. And so for a long time you practice what you call the presence of God, which is really the practice of an image you have of God so you can feel good about yourself when you can remember the practice. That's not the practice of God. But I began to realize that unless my mind was my own, I was dead in the water, just personal. And so for years, in fact, it still goes on because once it started, it doesn't stop. I practice a certain form of ceaseless prayer. That was all I did. I would not let my mind do anything that wasn't with my awareness of what it was doing, because if it started to do something that I wasn't aware of, it would have broken the prayer. That was just my own work. So it didn't matter, I was driving, sitting at the table with my family, whatever I was doing, that was all that was going on. Because that way at least I knew, even though it was mechanical, I knew that nothing could come into that I wouldn't be aware of something breaking into it. And if I could be aware of what was breaking into it, then I would know the nature of what was doing it. And now that goes on by itself. And so, Mary, to answer your question, if you are trying to develop something to avoid something that disturbs you, what is developing, whatever it says it is ensuring that you remain someone ceaselessly measuring all forms of disturbance as being a mistake. Here's a mistake. Me identifying with the calm when I'm in a storm. That's a mistake. How many of you, John, try to appear calm at all moments when the main disturbance in your life is creating a storm? You understand the question, yes or no? Why? Because that's the path of least resistance, is to affirm an identity of myself as someone who mustn't show that I'm ready to kill you. And so I live in a perpetual pain-making consciousness that believes the appearance of being calm is the same as being connected to something celestial and true. That's called purgatory. It is hell to try to be something that you're not. Unlike this world that tells you, imitate all of these things, because if you can pull it off, by God, they'll believe you are that way, and then you can get them to give you things. Let me be what I am. Not identify with what something's saying I am. Just let me be what I am given to see, because if I will see what I'm being given, I can't make a mistake because I'll not be outside of that revelation. Right, Terry? Sometimes I look at Terry and she's like she's eating a lemon. I swear to God. You know what, Kate? I want to put a camera up here. And when we get everything else set that we can pan to certain students, I could do it. And then I could throw their picture up on the screen really quick. And how many people will come to class then? All is well. On we go, Doug.
All right, Guy, we're at the top of the hour. We have 2 in the queue, and we have 3 written questions. So
Do we have any old written questions?
we have 1 old written question.
That comes up next. Then we'll take the 2 in the queue, and we'll see where we are.
Okay. All right, this was from Raju, and he's referring to last week's talk, last Sunday's, and he says, this one session, Guy, it's so many of life's truths. You are always thorough and comprehensive, but this one today was special. Perhaps my consciousness was ready only in this moment to receive all of it. The question to me always is the moment revealing to me today a different one when this was revealed to me too? Am I truly learning then?
Is the moment revealing to me today a different one when this was revealed to me too? You know, I made a note I intend to incorporate into the forthcoming talks. All of you have seen the movies or documentaries, whatever the case may be, in somewhere in the East, traditionally a Buddhist tradition, where monks seemingly sit around and participate with these very fine grains of colored sand and produce what they call a mandala. Now, mandalas are kind of enneagrams. They are representations of the logos, of the broader scheme of creation, everything related in the mandala to everything else, so that it is actually a kind of a grand microcosmically painted macrocosm of the yin and yang of all of this movement. And they can spend a day, a week, a month on these magnificent drawings, and then what do? They take a broom and they brush it away. That's what I described to you today. And that's your answer, Raju. Why would there be someone here trying to measure whether or not yesterday was the right thing that I did, or that today will be right and change tomorrow? Unless there's something in me that is identified with whatever that movement is and wants to make sure I'm in the right place at the right time doing the right thing. That's the mistake. Because there is no one outside of what is taking place to do that. Even though in this world, and I get it, because Raju is, over years I get to know these students who just visit online. He's a business person. And he wants to apply for the good or not of the teachings, so he can help develop the people that he works with in their line of business, whatever that may be. We have all kinds of doctors and psychologists and people attend these talks because they want to learn. But let us not look at learning as something that is an incremental journey into being a more progressive, productive human being. Because the minute that I try to become, in quotes, a more progressive, productive human being, I have, without knowing it, decided what a productive human being is. And a productive human being is not outside of the perfection of this life. So that's my answer to Raju. Over to you, Doug.
All right, we have Gladys and Robert in the queue. So here's Gladys.
Hi, Guy.
Hi, Gladys.
I'm an artist, and I do receive a monthly pension because I'm retired, so it covers everything I need, basically.
Yes.
And I'm so happy and grateful when I'm painting, and I want to improve my craft. I want to be able to create better and better art.
Of course.
And that's fine when I'm creating consistently, but every once in a while I can paint, moving or things like that for a couple of weeks, sometimes even a month. And then when that happens, I notice I get sad. And then when I get sad because I'm not painting, I start thinking, well, maybe if I get a new car or travel or something like that. And when that happens, I'm wondering if, is it okay to want that, I guess? Since I already have everything and I'm able to do what I love, part of me says, well, why would you want more than you need? But then that desire is there if I'm really quiet. So I guess that's my struggle.
Yeah. So I think there was a number of elements, if I was able to hear what you were saying. At one point, I think you said that you become sad because you can't do what you love to do. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
So there's, as with all things, Gladys, if whatever kind of artist you are, the artistry is not this dab of paint or that note or that chord. The artistry is not this one particular chip off of the marble. The artistry is the whole of the movement between, and let's be very careful, in quotes, I see myself as the creator of the creation. But the truth is, there would be no creator of the creation wishing to create something that it feels unless there were a creator behind this creation that then is giving birth to the next level of itself. So that in the end, it's always the divine trying to express itself through the instrument of its creation, through asking its creation to create something, so that there can be, if you will, this lineage of influences. Now, if that's true, where in the name of God does sadness come into that, other than it is a moment in which, not knowing who and what to be in this moment, something will glom onto this, I wish I was here, I'm sad that I'm not. And so in that moment, you are, if you will, a creation of something that is not very good for you, and continuing itself through the identity it produces because I can't do or get to what I want. That's one side of it. The other side of it is this, Gladys. And today's talk deals with this, probably why it brought up the question in you. Do you ever feel like a mud puddle? A lump of clay, an old piece of wood in a fireplace, charred and not burning? Well, cheer up, bunko. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm dead. I have no wish, I have no will, I have no love. All I feel is that somehow or other I'm supposed to do something and nothing in me wants to do anything at all. Yes or no? So here I am, I'm an artist, and I sit down to my easel or my chunk of clay or my hunk of marble, whatever it is, or my piano or my guitar, whatever it might be. And here's part of the problem. And I think I'm supposed to do something. Now, there's always the impetus. Isn't that what creation is a ceaseless impetus, yes or no? But I can't find anything in myself. And this applies for you men and women who give talks here, student talks. The ember that is the artistry itself never goes out unless over a long period of time you ignore it. But if you will pay attention to and wait quietly, think of stillness as a breeze. Think of stillness as a kind of fan, where my wish to create, to participate, to explore, to expand, where my wish is acting even though I'm not aware of it, fanning that ember into anything knowledgeable yet, attainable. But if you remain there with that wish, that stillness that wants to bring forth what you know is there, it is impossible that you will not receive an impression. Now, you've heard the expression, have you not, that God always answers your prayers, yes or no? But not so popular is that lots of times he answers them by ignoring you. Well, God never ignores you. What you're given to see is that there may be something out of line with whatever you're insisting with, so that if you receive the impression that there's a demand or a fear or an anxiety behind your wish, then your prayer has been answered, but not in the way you expected it to be answered. That's my answer, Gladys. One more, Doug.
Okay, we'll do Robert in the queue. We'll end with him and I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, and I will get
Robert,
I'll get to the unanswered ones, the unanswered written questions on Wednesday.
Good morning.
Hi, Robert.
How you doing? This talk kept on bringing to mind something Mr. Howard used to say in a variety of ways, and it's something that's never left me because, well, it serves the very things that you were talking about today, and that was whenever negativity hits in one form or another, to remember, oh, your dear, poor, precious feelings. And it was a great way of remembering that that you need to come back to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And see how you are part of something much bigger.
Yes. And importantly, to not imagine yourself as a part of something bigger, because there's consolation in the iconic worship of any such image, but to have the understanding that you're part of something bigger because you're aware of how small all of that is in the moment. How small are your precious feelings. Only when they are there together is there something meaningful taking place in terms of transformation. If there is just one or the other, there is nothing of value there. That's it. Off we go into the wild blue yonder. Oh, no, we don't. Who would like to come up and speak? Does anybody want to come up and speak? You're welcome to stay with us. We often have student speakers who share something, and there's a dialogue. And if not, here comes Eric. Eric used to study with Shakespeare a long time ago.
Good morning. My name is Eric. And last Wednesday was about inner bullies. And we gave examples of these inner bullies that are personal.
Right.
And one example that I thought of is the push to pull it off again.
Yep.
And that could be in a worldly sense, trying to do something that you've done well again, like whatever it is. But kind of interesting is pulling it off again in a spiritual sense, where I don't know, maybe you did something right because you were present to whatever, to some extent, whatever extent. And then the mind Eric immediately comes in or thinks about it later and examines that and hopes that if that situation comes about again, that it can do the same thing yet again. As if that's the purpose of, being present in the first place, is to somehow make myself larger. But to pull it off again, to being pushed into trying to do that, what a pressure that is. But to see it as that is the gradual waking up to it, and not believing everything that you're being told by your own mind.
Hi, everybody. My name is Deborah. This kind of goes along with what Guy was just saying to Gladys. So in the work, it feels like there's an ebb and flow. Sometimes you feel it and sometimes you don't. But when I'm in the ebb, there's a nature that tells me this is not how it should be. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be ebbing. It's exactly.
Yes.
When you were talking about in the beginning about the whole universe, it's how everything works. I can't even begin to say it the way you did, but everything ebbs and flows, and it's exactly how it should be if I'm there to see the ebbing. So I just wanted to share that.
Debbie needs to see the Ebby. It is because, you see, it's the resistance to the ebb that makes Deb. Yeah. But if there weren't resistance to the ebb, then Deb would see she's not the ebb, because the ebb would turn into the flow. And there you go, Deb. Come on, Katie.
Good morning. My name is Kate. Oh boy. Really good talk for me today. I wrote this down from the talk. Learning is not using new knowledge in order to not make a mistake. And I want to kind of tie this with one of my favorite quotes is, I think I have this right, by far the best proof is experience.
Yes.
I think that's Francis Bacon. That's what pops to mind anyway. And said differently, Guy has told us a million times, find out for yourself. And real life is just this constant, I wish I'd written down what he just said a minute ago about the forces acting upon you in a ceaseless way. But that's what real life is. Real life is not about trying to keep everything in place, set things up so that there are no mistakes coming down the road, which is going to be a big challenge for the next couple months. It's always a challenge, actually, for me personally. But isn't it interesting that there's something in me that thinks that it's bad to actually be living and to be made into something new, moment to moment to moment. Isn't it strange, that there's this instinctive resistance
Yes.
psychologically that goes on to what feels like a mistake? God has made a mistake. And so just even to keep that in my heart,
Yes.
that's enough to start with, that little seed. Because I can even feel like, and especially like you can tell right now, I'm a little emotional. There's something working, to kind of like break down this
Yes.
stiff, scar-like tissue of Kate. I remember when Eric broke his ankle, and one of the things that physical therapist did was constantly like mashing into his foot, to try and loosen it up and break up that scar tissue and get it moving again and allow real healing to happen. So all these things are kind of swimming around in my mind and heart, and I'm grateful for a place like this that allows you to sort of be suspended in that uncertainty and allow something to happen.
Indeed. The early worm catches the wane.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wayne. This is one of those talks, Guy, that just really stirred something up into me. And it has a lot to do with mistakes and the fear of mistakes, because I don't know, a lot of times I just don't know how to flush it out. But there's this feeling and a remembering of something, and it has a lot to do with, of what Kate was talking about, this uncertainty. And it's like this nature wants an answer. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sort of like working, and I don't know what the answer is.
If I knew, I don't know the answer, I couldn't be in the anxious pursuit of it.
Mm-hmm.
If I knew, I don't know the answer.
If I knew, I don't know the answer.
I could not possibly be in the anxious pursuit of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to know.
Okay.
Then that means I have to remain in the moment where something is acting on me and I want it to go away when I have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Then I stop trying to make it go away And lo and behold, I begin to understand the nature of Wayne, of Guy, or whatever it may be. It's the same consciousness, Wayne.
Yes, because it was easier for this nature to make that mistake, instead of.
It's the path of least resistance.
That's right. It's the path of least resistance. That's right. Thank you.
Stop it. There is nothing worse for the soul in formation than the default acceptance of the path of least resistance. Nothing.
Hello, my name is Ellen. And this is the main idea I want to remember from this talk. And that's that there's this constant, unceasing process of development. And when this nature sees one of those steps in the process and it doesn't fit what she thinks should be there because of what she identifies within herself, she sees it as a mistake and then identifies with that mistake and stops the whole process of development on the very thing that she doesn't want. Whereas if it was a hands-off, then the process would continue.
Correct.
And the quote came to my mind, "In thy weaknesses my strength made perfect."
Mm-hmm.
And so in a way, well, as you said it, there's no such thing as a mistake. It's all the perception of the moment. And if we could just see it and not...
When real change takes place, there is no one there who made a mistake. When real change takes place, there was no one left there who made a mistake. The avoidance of the real change is the only mistake there is.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's it.
By George, we've got it now. Okay, folks. You have your work. Get busy. Don't look anything like you do now when I see you Wednesday, okay?